Look at that. Finally here.
Welcome everyone to the 2025 Luremasters night, held here at the new Hunting and Fishing Westgate. The boys have put on a huge effort to get the store ready. They only had their grand opening on the weekend, so it was actually a big effort to get it ready for you guys here tonight, but they wanted to showcase the new store, which is cool. My name is Justin from Daiwa, New Zealand. I have the privilege of speaking to you guys tonight, which is cool. I think it's because everyone else gapped it and I got given a list here of bits and pieces. Now the main speaker we've got on tonight is a friend of mine, Joe. Everyone knows him as Joey Wilds. He's an absolute legend in his field, both in the fishing and the hunting world. So he's our main speaker tonight. I'm going to briefly speak to you basically just on a few soft bait tactics, especially in the way of realms of actually rigging your baits, changing baits, jig heads, bits and pieces. And one of my favourite styles of fishing that I have done, I was talking to Wayne about it, who back when we were a lot younger and a lot less greys, soft baiting first started in New Zealand, a lot of those fundamental things are still the same today, okay? And we've learnt a lot over our time of fishing soft bait. So I'm not going to go over every single technique and that, it'll be hours worth. I've only got about 20 minutes to talk, but one thing that I was talking to Wayne about and a few others, and we really wanted to emphasise, is on rigging baits, the style of baits, colour of baits, UV, jig heads, all these types of things, because it's a lot of stuff that really gets overlooked. So one of the biggest things is, and I'm not going to lie about it, okay? Soft baiting, it's pretty cheap. Your soft baits aren't ridiculously expensive. It's actually a lot cheaper than bait fishing once you get into it. So a couple of things I see is the amount of people, my old man is included in one of those, is trying to make a soft bait last them a couple of months, okay? Like, I know fishing is expensive, but one thing I learned from a very, very young age was that every single bait you cast, you want it to look like the perfect bait every time, because you do not know when you're going to have anything from a tiny penny to a 25-pound snapper, especially wash fishing and that. You cannot control what goes on. But the one thing you can control, and this is what I want to talk about tonight, is you can control your presentation. You can control what jig heads you use, what baits you use, what colours you choose, what fluorocarbon you use, when to change your fluorocarbon, when to change your knots, jig heads, soft baits. Those are all stuff that are now in your wheelhouse, and you can absolutely have all the say in that. The things you can't have the say in is, have I just cast my bait into the wash and there's a 20-pound snapper about to grab it? Those are things you can't control. Like, there's a good chance it might do, but you can't control what size fish goes. So the one bit of advice I would say is that every bait you cast, you want it to be prepared that it could be that fish of the lifetime. And anyone that's cast wash fishing, you do not know what size fish you can get. So always be prepared that it could be that fish of the lifetime. So as far as soft baits go, the one thing we're lucky with Daiwa is we get to have a lot of input in our baits. And this is huge. And the reason being is, when it comes to colours, for instance, okay, colours for snapper can be important, but also not that important as well, okay, which sounds weird. But you all know what type of colours snapper see? It is a trick question, they can't see colour, okay? So if you put that fact in there, that snapper can't see colour the way we think we see colour, the reason colour is now becomes important in soft baits is because what you're trying to do is imitate what snapper do see. So snapper are very good at seeing UV, and they're also good at seeing different shades. So just to be aware, things like scallops, kinner, mussels, baitfish, they all have their certain colours, so therefore they have certain shades in the water. So what we've tried to do at Daiwa, we've tried to imitate a lot of those types of colours. So for instance, like one colour we brought out 2 seasons ago was this colour here, which is smash kinner. Now, a lot of people, whether they're fishing jigs, lures, soft baits, will notice that orange works really well. There's a couple of reasons being, okay? One of them is that snapper see UV really, really well. UV can penetrate very, very deep down through the water column. Orange is one of the highest natural emitting colours of UV light. Okay, so that's why down in depths, UV's seen really, really well. So that colour there, smash kinner, we've also given it the sort of purpley black top. Essentially, we've just imitated a kinner. And if anyone's cracked a kinner in half and thrown that out to a snapper, they absolutely smash it. Okay, so that's why we've gone to design a colour like that. Also last year, we designed a colour that we wanted to imitate piper. Now this colour, I must admit, when you first see it on the shelf, it's called Island Ahi, it doesn't necessarily look like a colour that looks super amazing. You don't look at it and go, wow, it's all colourful and that. It actually looks quite plain. It's sort of a grey, sort of silver, bit of speckled, and sort of like almost a little bit rainbow shimmery. But that colour there, when piper are actually in the water, they do let off quite a bit of shimmer, a little bit of silver. They're not that pale white that everyone sees when they're dead or cooked. So we imitated a piper, and that colour has soon become one of our most popular colours. And then we also had one which I've got here somewhere, which is also killer kutai. So snapper love mussels. They love smashing into kinner, to mussels, to scallops and that. So we've tried to imitate the green lip mussel. So that's where that killer kutai colour come out. But I will say, there's not a lot of fish or bait fish in the ocean that are this colour here. So this is the new Korean barbecue. Quite clearly, there's no Korean barbecue in the water, but Injun one day, obviously, if anyone's seen his video, was, you know, cooking his famous Korean barbecue, and I can contest, I have had his Korean barbecue. It is absolutely amazing. The man is a hell of a cook. But obviously he dropped a bit of Korean barbecue overboard, clear water, fish went nuts, so obviously we got into collab with him because he came to us with an idea that he said, look, this colour here, he thinks it's going to be an absolute banger. So a huge amount of testing in this colour, it's turned out to be an absolute winner for us. So that is the new Korean barbecue. So if you haven't got your ones from the door, just see the guys afterwards, but this bait's going to be phenomenal. So the reason I've mentioned these baits is the good thing at Daiwa is we actually have a lot of say. These are our colours. So we have chosen them, designed them. These are not ones we've picked out of a catalogue. We will tell them a brief of what we want, what we're trying to imitate, and then eventually they send a lot of samples down. We'll go, hey, no, not bright enough, too bright, not right colour, you know. So we'll go through it to get our prime colours that we want. So, and we're finding that all our New Zealand colours that we're designing are soon becoming our most popular models, in amongst all the other ones that are popular, but these have become really, really, really popular for us. As far as a couple of different styles, I pretty much fish two styles. One of them everyone knows, your traditional jerk shad, okay? These here, I fish a 7-inch bait. I'm big on big baits, because to me, big profile, big baits, bigger fish. It's just a bit of a theory I go down. Don't get me wrong, catch them on all size soft baits. I enjoy a little micro baiting, but we're talking Luremasters. We're going after the big fish. Okay, we'd rather catch nothing small, but that one big fish. So to me, big profile baits, which brings me to obviously the wave minnow. Now, when you see it on the packet, it says 5.5 inch. That's only to the bottom of the round. By the time the bait's actually in the water and its tail's twisting round, it's a good sort of 7 or 8 inch bait. So it's actually a really good profile bait. So to me, big profile is the killer when it comes to big fish. Now the one thing with these wave minnows, they have become one of the easiest soft baits you could use. As long as you can cast a soft bait and wind the handle, that's all you got to do with these things. It is so easy to use. Jerk shads, you have to jerk around a little bit more, bit of twitching in that. With these wave minnows, it's literally a drop, let them sink to its desired rate, and then just a slow wind. It's that basic. So a couple of things I want to talk about when it comes to jig head. So as far as selection goes for jig heads, a couple of fundamental mistakes I see with people is they either go too heavy or too light. It's one of their biggest ones. And they are also going to try and put a hook that does not fit that soft bait. Okay? There is a reason that there is a lot of different jig head sizes we have them from a size tiny 4 for trout up to a big 7 burrow, which we use on some of our big 10-inch gars, which are a big piper imitation. So the point is there's a lot of different jig heads for all different soft baits. So it's actually really important that you get the right size jig head for your baits, okay? You want the hook to be pronounced nicely. It's not like bait fishing, you don't have to have your hook hidden, okay? Snapper, they're used to sharp things, okay? If you've ever seen them eat scallops, kinners, they don't care about a few spikes. They don't worry about a hook. I've caught a snapper, I think with Gareth from Daiwa. I hooked one, got it up, it already had a bait and a hook in its mouth, and it was Gareth on the other side of the boat. So the snapper had hoovered up 2 baits and then just swam to the surface. He didn't care about a sharp prick. So don't worry about trying to have your jig heads hidden in your baits. Now, once again, don't be tight asses, change your jig heads, okay? If they're blunt or bent out, don't try to resharpen them, don't get your pliers out, try and bend the barb back, they're damaged, get rid of them. Like I said, these are some of the cheapest parts of your fishing tackle, make sure they are the best. The amount of times I see people buy the most expensive soft bait sets, and there's some mean deals here tonight, anywhere from 150 bucks up to some of the sets we fish are 1,500 to 2 grand. So there's a lot of money, but you'll be amazed how many people I've seen fish $1,500 soft bait sets and they're still trying to recycle their jig heads that are rusty and trying to sharpen the points up and that. To me, that's just a big no-no. Like, you've got a couple of really key important parts, and it is your terminal tackle. It is your jig heads. Make sure they are rust-free. Now, it's fine if you wash them and you keep them in the tray for a sort of, just in case moment, but leave it at that. Put it this way, the only time I'd use the rusty old jig head would be because I've got none left and it was a matter of life and death. I need to catch a fish, so I'm going to use that rusty jig head. So the amount of times that you've got a jig head, even a tiny bit of rust, it is going to make that hook snap. That hook is compromised. Same thing with the sharp points. You want sharp. So for me, if I get my jig head up, even if I have to even question my setup, I cut it off. Simple as that. Same with baits. If your baits are not looking right, okay, now that can be even a brand new bait that you've rigged on and it's not on properly. You look at it and I could think of a few words of what they look like, but they're all shriveled up and you look at it and go, oh, that should be right. That there is a big no. You want every bait to look as perfect as possible. If you can, undo it, re-rig it again so it's all sitting nicely, because you want that profile of the bait to look as good as you can. I know these sound like really tiny little, the fish don't really care. The point is, you don't want to have that question in your mind when you cast that bait. You want to go, I've got the sharpest hook, I've got the best hook for this bait, I've got the strongest, I've also got the right jig head weight, and then also, a big one is my fluorocarbon. Am I using the right fluorocarbon for what I'm doing? So when it comes to Luremasters, most of the time over sand, I'm 16 to 20 pound, not a problem at all. You're going to stop any fish that swims with that. Once I start getting into the wash fishing, I'm minimum 25 pound, most of the time I'm 30 pound. If I'm in real rugged country, I don't like doing it, I can even go to 40 pound. Because if I'm trying to get a really big snapper out of really nasty, skinny water, well, I mean by water that can be up to, some of the places we cast are less than a metre, and we're trying to stop 25 pound snapper that essentially you've already given them all the line. You've already cast in, so all he's got to do is just swim sideways. So I need to be able to stop those fish. So if I'm fishing a really nice rod, really nice reel, got plenty of drag, and I've got good strong braid, I want my fluorocarbon and my jig head to be able to handle the amount of pressure I'm going to put on it, especially when it comes to wash fishing. So make sure your fluorocarbon is of good quality as well. Once again, don't buy the best set you can and then put the cheapest braid and the cheapest fluorocarbon on there. Those are actually the most important parts. And the amount of times we see people, buy really nice sets and go, oh, what's the cheapest braid you got? Wrong question. Trust me, it gets said. So also, when it comes to hook size as well, make sure you've got the right gauge as well. So you can get hooks that look similar size, but when you step up one extra size, it might have a lot thicker gauge. We had a lot of people fishing like some of our little 3-bar-O's, and I had one guy goes, oh, I bent the hook out a little bit. Well, he was fishing 30 pound braid, 40 pound fluorocarbon, 7-inch baits, and trying to pull 25 pound snapper out of the wash. Those baits are made for some of our more micro ones, where he should have been a 4 or 5-bar-O, which are a lot thicker gauge hook. So, and then once he changed to that, never ever had another problem. So it's about mixing those right jig heads, right baits for the right situations, okay? Now when it comes to your gear as well, the one advice I'll give you for soft baiting gear is buy the most expensive you can afford, okay? Of course you're saying, yep, he's at Daiwa, of course he's going to say that. Well, I am. But the point is that you're now, if you have a look at the soft bait gear, the reels are tiny, the rods are really tiny, skinny. The only way you can get those to be as strong as some of the big stuff is the technology that goes into them. So they tend to cost a bit more. So when it comes to soft baiting gear, you're asking a big job of a very, very little light setup. So the better money you spend on those soft bait sets, not saying that some of the cheaper sets won't catch fish, they will, but if you're trying to target really big snapper time and time again, you'll find that you'll run out of horsepower on those sets and you're not going to get the longevity out of them opposed to stepping up. So, and if it's your style of fishing, like to me, soft baiting is a really big style of my fishing. So what I'll do is I spend a lot more money on my soft baiting gear than I do, say, my surf casting gear, which I do only occasionally. And then I know surf cast guys that will spend thousands on their rods or their gear because they don't do any other styles of fishing that often. So spend your money on what your style of fishing is that you do, a lot more often. Also preparation. So the biggest one I will say is always be prepared for that big snapper, because the amount of times that we've been on boats and we've caught, we've been wash fishing and we're casting all day long, which is another one. Don't give up casting, okay? I know you can be 1,000 casts a day and going, man, just nothing's happening, and then that one cast, bang, you've just put it in the nose of a 25 pound snapper in the wash, and that was the fish of the lifetime. So don't stop that. But you just want, and I really reiterate, you want to be prepared that every time you cast, you go, there was nothing that I could not have done better to have stopped that fish. And trust me, you're going to lose a lot of big snapper in the wash. That's just going to happen. That doesn't matter how good you are. Like, that's just a fact. The amount of big snapper that are there, and where you're casting them into that type of territory, like, honestly, you're probably going to lose 1 in every 3 that you hook. Like, we all do. And anyone that says they don't, they're obviously not fishing enough. So it does happen. So what you want, though, is to be going, I had the best braid, I had the best knots, I had the best jig head, I gave myself my best chance. And if the fish won, that was the fish's one on the day. That was him. That was his day. So also with preparation too, I'm pretty big on having all my gear rigged, ready to go. So, like, for instance, this is what my jig head box would look like, nice and uniformed. I've got about 3 or 4 different ones. I've got one with my micro baits, I've got one with my sort of 3 to 5 burrow, and then I've got one with my 6 to 7 burrow. So the reason is that I know if I'm fishing 7-inch baits or these bigger baits, that's my box I get. That's got all my jig heads I've got in there. And as far as choosing your weight goes, if you're deep water soft baiting, if anyone's seen little Willie Lomas up north, he won't tell you, but one of his little secrets is big 2-ounce jig head, big soft bait, drops it in the bottom, chucks it in his rod holder while he casts his other soft baits, and the amount of 20-pound snapper he's caught like that is unbelievable over the sand. Obviously, don't do that over the reef, you're going to get snagged every time, but over the sand, you'll be amazed, even that rocking action, he's caught huge fish that way. My point is over that sand and that deep water, use heavy. You want to get down to the bottom. If you're not feeling yourself getting to the bottom, you're not fishing. Okay. The other one is complete opposite. When we start going into our wash fishing, yes, you want to get down, but you want it to stall and sink as slow as possible. Now, these Bait Junkie baits are actually a buoyant bait, so they float. So the good thing with that is it will give a little bit of natural buoyancy on the jig head you put it on, but we just fish little quarters or sometimes 1/8 or lighter, whatever we can, enough to get the cast, but we want it to be a slow sink rate down, because the longer hang time you can give it, the more chance you've got of a snapper to be able to see it. So the other thing to me, and this goes against what some people do, the clearer the water for me, the brighter the lure I go. For the reason being, I'll put something that emits a lot of colour, a lot of UV. For the reason being is that when the water to me is real murky and dark, snapper don't have some amazing eyesight. They can't see from thousands of miles away, so they tend to just eat in front of them. They tend to go down, pick up shellfish, dig into sand and that sort of stuff. When the water's clearer, especially wash fishing, the snapper will be round because they're watching everything sort of getting rotated and falling back down on them, so they're looking around. So that's where I'll choose a bait that's got really high UV, really good colours, which is the opposite to what a lot of people say. Bright colour, I use a dark lure. Like I said, snapper can't see colour, they see shades. And every colour, the further it goes down in the water column, becomes natural and then goes dark anyway. So for me, in the dirtier, darker water, I go to a darker lure, because the further down it goes, the darker silhouette it gives. So it actually gives more of a shape. And I'm always action over colour anyway. So to me, the snapper do not usually bite because of colour. It might attract them, but most of the time they're going to bite because of action. So to me, action is more important, which comes back to our preparation. Make sure that bait's on there really nicely. If you feel your bait's not swimming good and that, just change it. Like I said, it's one of the cheapest parts of your fishing. It's definitely the one thing to change. See if I've covered pretty much everything off here. The last thing I'll just cover off, because like I said, I don't want to talk for hours. The boys at the back always give me stick because... Is that you? Are you yawning there, Chris? Sorry. Is our braid choice as far as colour goes. The amount of times I see everyone, they go soft baiting, they go, I want multicolour braid on there. Trust me, if you can cast your colours as you're casting, you're really good. Okay, you've got an amazing vision to see those colours going out as you're casting. What you want to see though, is you want to be able to see your line. You want to be able to see if there's bellies in your line. You want to be able to see if there's slack in your line. You want to be able to see where your bait's actually sitting. So I always advise high vis as you can, either a bright chartreuse. We also just brought out an even brighter colour this year, J Braid Expedition, which is a really fluoro orange. To us, the more high vis, the better. Like I said, the fish don't care. They couldn't care less what colour your braid is. But the more you can see it, the more you're able to adjust. You're able to mend your line, you're able to sort of look and go, especially in low light conditions, some of those multicoloured braids, you can cast it out, and if it gets to a dark colour, I can't even see it on the water. I can't even see where my bait is. So to me, the high vis colour is an absolute winner when it comes to, for me, for casting, because I want to be able to see where I've put my lure in all types of light conditions, especially if the light's starting to dim, which can be some of your best time fishing. So that's probably about it for me. Like I said, I'm going to be here all night anyway, and any other questions, technical stuff, we can go over everything, but we're just cautious. We don't want to keep everyone here all night. We've got prizes to give away, which is I'm sure everyone's here for. Is there some halftime thing that we're doing? You sure? So I can put a disclaimer for this? I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but there's apparently something called the hottest chip. If someone admits that they want to try this chip, which I don't know any one of you would, but there is 10 packets of Bait Junkies of their choice. This kid's already put his hand up. And also a free ticket to 2026 Luremasters, so it's actually not a bad prize. Anyone else? I've got 2 hands. I've got three hands. So, and there's 4, it's 5. How are you all that into this?
How old are you? Oh, you look like the oldest one here. Yeah, come up.
Yeah.
The anticipation's pretty amazing.
I don't like
What do you reckon, Injun? Milk?
I don't like spicy food.
You don't like, you put your hand up for the wrong challenge on that.
It's a lot smaller than I thought.
Well, that's, yeah, no, I get that all the time. Thanks. It's not that bad? Well, look at that. I mean, for that, you...
Feeling it a bit now.
Feeling a bit now? Yeah. Starting to creep? Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting a bit hot now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What hotness level out of 1 to 10?
About 7. Oh, 7 right now.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Now it's like an 8. Yeah. It's just getting worse.
Yeah, no. Well, there you go. The man just got 10 packets of Bait Junkies and a free ticket. Oh, yeah. Oh, there you go. There's a bit of halftime entertainment for you. So I'm going to introduce the world famous Joe. You guys will know him as Joey Wilds. Just give us 2 seconds just while we chop the mic over. And like I said, I've known Joe for a long time, and I still get excited to hear him talk and hear about what he does and his adventures and watch it. And it's cool, you know, someone that you know watching him and getting excited as well. So I'll give you guys get a round of applause for Joe.
So first of all, guys, just got to say this is the first time for me being in this store. It's pretty impressive, massive store, huge footprint. So it's actually pretty cool to come and have a look. And good turnout with you guys as well. So thanks for coming along tonight. The Luremasters event is a pretty cool competition, you know, with the release aspect to it. So who here is going to be targeting Kingfish for it? Put your hands up. Who's going to hopefully get into some Kingfish for it? A few hands, a few going up. So I'm going to be talking about a few things tonight, guys. I'm going to be talking about my current favourite setups for this time of year. We're going to talk about lure options and, you know, lure colours, styles that have worked for me to get bites this time of year, this sort of springtime. I've got a few notes here just to keep me on track, and I'm going to ask if there's any questions every now and again. So if you think of something you want to ask, if you've got a question, just put your hand up and we can get into that. So I'll get one of the first rods, which is this guy right here, which is probably my favourite setup at the moment. I'm going to just walk you through it basically, but it's the reels that I like to use are Daiwa Saltiga 18,000s. Now both these combos are the 25 Saltiga, and if you saw my film, The Hunt for the Unicorn that we did last summer, both these reels were the reels we were using in that film. So we were lucky enough to get these 2 Saltigas in November last year, and we had a good solid couple of months using them behind the scenes before they were announced to the public. So I felt pretty special out there using them on the rocks, and they absolutely slayed it. So the previous Saltigas, unreal, amazing reels, but they've just smashed it out of the park with these ones. These ones are a really good reel in my opinion. So I like the 18,000s. Just a good all-round size. There's a lot of power in there. There's a lot of grunt, so it's definitely my go-to size. I'm running PE10 braid on them. I generally like to put quite a lot of pressure on a fish. So the PE10 it's kind of the sweet spot for me. A lot of you guys will be fishing out of boats and stuff like that. So I'd recommend PE8, PE10. If it's me, I just go with the PE10 because I'm doing a lot of land base as well as the boat stuff. So PE10, it's a Saltiga EX12 braid. And yeah, this is actually the original spoolings that we did on these reels back in November last year. They've had a full season on them. They've probably caught, I don't know how many fish, a lot of fish on them, and they're actually still good. They're a little bit low on the spools, but the braid seems to be going really well. If we move up to the leaders, 170-pound Saltiga nylon is actually my favorite leader at the moment. I've been running that for a couple of years now, and it used to always be 200-pound, but I've dropped down to 170 with the Saltiga stuff, and it's actually going really well. I'm not missing the 200-pound, and I'm not losing fish because I've dropped down in leader weight. So good abrasion resistance, and it seems to, I don't know, it's just that sweet spot. It's still transparent in the water, but offers a lot of protection when I'm getting into the reefs and getting into the rocks. So the rod, this rod here is my favorite rod. It's the Dragger Breakthrough. It's the 83XXXH. So it's actually a 3-piece rod. If you saw on my YouTube channel, I went to Oman. I was using this rod in Oman out of the boats, but I also use this rod off the rocks, land-based kingies as well. So in my opinion, it's a pretty good all-rounder if you're doing boat and land-based stuff. It packs down small, which is always handy when you've got to walk into spots or you've got to store it on your boat. But I just really like the action. It's got a ton of grunt, and when I need to put a bit of pressure on some fish, it's, you know, I basically don't bottom out with this rod. I can give it everything I've got, and there's still more to give, which is what I like. So yeah, that's sort of leads into this time of year. Now coming into spring, especially September, October, is, in my opinion, always a really good time to find the big fish, and it's historically that time of year, you get smaller packs coming through, but they're often bigger fish, like bigger quality fish. So you want to basically go with some pretty heavy gear because you don't know what you're going to run into. So this time of year for me, I'm always excited. The fishing, it's not always action-packed like it is in December or January, but most of the time I'm going to find some pretty serious fish. And for the Luremasters event, you're looking for the big ones. So it's a really good time, not only for the snapper fishing, but also to find the really big kingfish. So heavy gear, heavy setups. I know the guys here, they've got some topwater sets over there on the racks, but the Saltigas, you know, I don't really need to speak for them. Everyone knows how good they are. They are definitely the real, in my opinion, for the big kingfish. But there is other options out there, and the guys will be able to talk you through different options depending on your different price points. But for me, the Saltigas, hands down, anything you throw at them, they're going to handle it. So that's why I like them. We're gonna talk about lures and how to work lures, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys will be pretty interested in because it's kind of controversial in some ways. But in my notes here, I've got it's a very interesting topic next to that point because swimming lures and different lure styles and colors and sizes is like, that's basically the thing that's going to get you the bite. So we're all out there to get the bite, and if you're using the wrong lure in the wrong situation, then often you can miss a bite that you would have got with something else. So we're going to get to that shortly, but before I move on, when we're talking about rod and reel setups, has anyone got any questions? Has anyone got anything they want me to? Yep. Braid to nylon, I run an FG. So FG knot, I do 20 spin knot. It's it's a pretty compact knot. It used to be a PR knot that I used, but the 20 FG is actually pretty good. And I haven't had it pull, haven't had it fail. I think, you know, a lot of you guys will probably know how to tie an FG knot, but if you don't, there's a few good videos on YouTube on how to do it. And FG knots I use for my light tackle stuff as well, so soft plastics and all my lighter stuff. The best video on YouTube is actually a video Briggsy did breaking down the FG knot. if you need to learn it, that is probably the one. He step by step teaches you how to do it. So the FG knot from your braid to your mono. And then probably another interesting one too is I use what's called an AG chain knot from my leader to my lure. And the AG chain knot it's an interesting knot because it's basically a pile of half hitches and then a special finishing knot afterwards. And what the AG chain knot does is it has a bit of stretch, it has a bit of give. So when you get a fish hit the lure, and I'm normally running a pretty heavy drag, especially when I'm land-based, when a fish hits the lure, the knot can actually stretch with those half hitches. It's got a bit of give. So it's almost like a small shock absorber. And I've probably been using the AG for over 10 years now, I'd say. And it's definitely stronger than any uni knot I could tie or have tied. So the AG chain knot, it's not a common one, but it's for what I do, it's a really good knot. So, and it's super simple to tie. I've got a video on how to tie that on my channel. You might have to scroll back because it's a very old video. Any other questions about the setup?
How long is your leader?
How long is my leader? So my leader, the way I measure my leader out, it is, I hold the knot in one hand, I hold the spool of leader in the other, and I stretch it out one time. I grab it, I stretch it out another time. So it's 2 entire arm spans. I think it's 2.3 meters, I'm pretty sure, because someone asked me that a while ago and I measured it out. I'm pretty sure it's 2.3 meters. But yeah, just 2 full arm spans, and that's easy because when you're on the rocks tying it or in your boat tying it, you can just simply do that. And that's a good length because it's long enough to cast. You're still going to get a really good cast out of it, but then it offers a lot of protection because we all know what kingies do. They like to head for the nearest structure and try wrap you around the rocks the first thing they do. So the longer leader you can handle, the better, in my opinion. Any further questions?
Left hand versus right hand handle setup?
Yep. So I fish with both. I don't really prefer either, but normally if I'm doing a big day of casting, I'll start off generally with my left hand wind. Halfway through the day, I'll switch over to right hand wind, and it basically just frees me up. So keeps the muscles, even, I guess. You don't get so tired if you're just running one side the whole time. But one benefit when you're looking at a casting point of view, if you're running a left hand wind setup, is that when you're casting, you'll be casting with your right. You're casting out and you're straight away into winding. You don't have to do the switch over wind. So that is a benefit of having a left hand wind if you're casting with your right hand. But for me, I generally switch between, and some days I'll be right hand, some days I'll be left hand. It doesn't really matter. But I do prefer it if I'm fresh and not 1,000 casts deep trying to make it work. So yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. I sort of forced myself to learn how to fish with both hands, 5-6 years ago. And since then I've just never looked back. And it's not a necessary thing, but if you did that, you'll probably, you'll see the benefits of it. But the main obvious one is you don't have to switch over when you cast. Yeah, so while I'm looking at that too, pretty heavy duty split ring to the lure, and then a heavy swivel, like an NT swivel. Or BKK do some pretty good ones as well. But what I look for in a swivel, it needs to be a good quality one. It needs to be rated to really high pressures, but it needs to be just small enough so I can pull it through the guides. So at the end of the day when I'm packing up, I can just undo the split ring, pull the leader right through the guides, take the reel off, and then I don't have to cut any knots, especially if I'm fishing the next day. I can just feed it back through, clip the lure on, and away I go. I'm into it. So yeah, that's basically in a nutshell the rod setup. These rods are going to be here all night too, so you can come and have a look at them. Just get a feel for the rods, feel for the balance and stuff. We're going to go into the, while I'm looking at it too, they said Hunting gear, 20% off tonight. For my hunting stuff, I'm running Hunting gear. It's good gear. And I think they were saying there's a McKinnon puffer jacket that's going to be in a draw tonight. Am I right? And you spend $50 on Daiwa gear, and you can go in the draw to win a McKinnon puffer, which is a pretty cool puffer jacket. It's waterproof. It's got waterproof feathers inside, and super lightweight. Just a really good jacket. I think they're valued at about $500. So you can get into that tonight if you spend $50 on Daiwa gear or more. we're going to talk about the hook combinations. I really like double singles. So you can see I'm running 2 assist hooks on there. They're on a small cord. That gives the hook a lot of movement. And there's quite a few reasons why I like that over trebles. But probably the most relevant one to the Luremasters comp is it's all about catch and release and looking after the future stock of fish and things like that. So I've found treble hooks often do a lot of damage to fish. And you'll get a fish in and it's pretty torn up due to so many points, so many barbs and stuff like that. I like to run the singles because when I get a hookup, I know it's a really solid hookup. It's a really, I've found that with the trebles, you can often get a hook pulled, you can often lose a fish, but with the single assists, if you get a bite and you get a proper hookup, there's a very high chance that hook's not going to come out. So I like it for that reason. I like it because it's pretty good on the fish. It doesn't damage the fish up too much. And it also, as a side effect, doesn't really destroy your lures. It doesn't really give your lures a lot of hook rash and stuff like that, where the hooks will wear away at the side of the lures. So yeah, there's many benefits for the singles. It is a little bit harder to swim your lures with the singles, but once you sort of get your head around how they work and how the lures are balancing, then you're normally away and you're normally pretty good. But I think I've probably run singles or at least assist singles pretty well exclusively for 4 or 5 years now. I do run trebles overseas for GT, but for the Kingfish, flexible assist is normally a really good option. And try to keep it so we've got a short one on the tail and a relatively short one on the belly. But if you have a look at these setups later tonight, you'll notice that the belly hook is not super stuck to the toe point. There is a little bit of flex and a little bit of give, and the hook is more towards that second, third back down the lure. So when the Kingfish come in, I've found that quite often they're coming in from and hitting the back end of it. So if you've got a couple of hooks more towards that back end of the lure, the hookup rates tended to be a little bit higher from the testing that I've done. So the singles definitely in my opinion the way to go. It's probably a slight chance of less hookups as you would with trebles, but the hookups are better and more solid, and they, in my opinion, they pay off more in the long run. So that's kind of why I run them. Most people here are probably running trebles and stuff. Has anyone actually run double singles before? So saying the safety thing, like we've all seen the Kingfish, if you got 6 points and the fish is flailing around and you're trying to get a photo or try to lay it on the mat or something, there's a lot of sharp points dangling around that can get you into a bit of trouble. So yeah, double singles, really good in my opinion. Any questions about that before we move on to the next bit? Yep.
Who makes the assist hooks?
Who makes the assist hooks? There's quite a few on the market. One of these is a Shout. The middle one's actually a prototype hook that a mate of mine is tying up. They're really good hooks. And BKK do some as well. The SF8090, I think they are. They're another really good hook that I've had good success on. The BKK ones are probably here. Maybe the Shout ones, I'm not sure. But yeah, the BKK ones you can just buy straight off the shelf and they're ready to go. Really strong hook. You won't worry about bending it. And I think you buy them in a 2-pack or something like that. They're the ones with the blue cord. You would have seen those before, I think. Yeah. Any other questions? Yep.
The size of the hooks matter when you're running the lure?
Yeah, they do. They do matter. I've played around with a lot of different sizing. I've gone with really big hooks. I've gone with really small hooks. And I've sort of found that there's a bit of a sweet spot. Like this lure here is a 130 gram OTL. So it's about, I think it's 220 or 230 mils long. So it's a reasonable size profile. But if we're looking at like a hook size that I would recommend with that, I don't know if you guys can see those there, but that's, in my opinion, pretty much about where you want to be. So I think for the BKK versions, it's between a 10 bar O and the Crusader hooks. The SF8090s are pretty good. And I think these Shouts, I think that's a 7 bar O in the Shout off memory. But yeah, BKK, you could probably look at them on a shelf and see the 10 bar O, and that'll be something that would suit this. The lure on that rod there is slightly smaller, and I'm running similar size hooks. They're kind of like not your medium size hooks, but they're more of the larger size, but they're not the big ones, if that makes sense. I found that the really big hooks on the lures, I lost quite a few hookup opportunities. The small hooks, I had a lot of hookups on them, but I also lost some opportunities. So that size there tends to be pretty good. And a good way to sort of check your hook sizing is if you can lay it across the lure. So you guys probably can't quite see that, but it's basically flush with the bottom of the lure, and the point is just poking over the top of the lure. So if a fish hits it, slides down it, no matter where that hook is, there's going to be a high chance that that point's going to get in that fish's mouth. If the hook was too small on the lure, it's going to be hidden in the profile of the lure. If a fish bites it, slides down the lure, there's less chance for it to hook up. Doesn't matter so much with the tail hook, but the belly hook is really important, that you need a little bit of point poking above the profile or below the profile, depending if you're running assists like this or big trebles or anything like that. So just think about that. But the sizing wise, BKK size 10s are pretty good sizing. And yeah, while we're on the lures, I think this lure here, if you watch my videos, you've probably seen me talk about this particular lure. It's the 130 gram blackjack from OTL, New Zealand made lure, and I would have caught, I'd say, it's probably up there with maybe, I don't know, 80% of the big fish I've ever caught have probably been on that lure. So it's kind of like my go-to lure for big fish, and it works better in some months than others, but as a rule, I generally never leave home without one of these at least in my lure box. So very, very good lure. Now they swim really well. They don't swim so well with the double assists, but for how I want them to swim, they actually swim perfectly. So I don't know if you've seen my videos, but I get a lot of comments of people saying that I need to learn how to swim a lure. And what they don't realize is that when they see the lure splashing along the surface, it's not because I'm not able to work the lure properly, but there's a reason why I'm making it splash along the surface. So the easiest way for me to put it is, when you see a pack of mullet or a pack of kohuru or something like that getting chased by kingfish, what are they doing? They're not under the water swimming so perfectly like this and all calm and relaxed. They're flipping, jumping out of the water like crazy, trying to get away from these fish chasing them. So what I try to do to imitate the bait fish as best as possible is, generally a cast for me will be straight out the back, and I'll work it in a little bit. If I see a fish come up behind it, then I start to speed up, and what I want the lure to do is, I call it porpoising. So on the surface of the water, the lure, the ideal situation is when the lure pops out of the water, nearly jumps right out, and then hits the water and dives under, and pops out and dives under. So the lure is pretty much porpoising, like you would see a little bait fish flying through the water, jumping. That's what I'm trying to imitate. And if I can imitate that exact action, I'd say 9 out of 10 times I get a bite, it's because I've been doing that porpoising technique. So when you guys are out there trying to get your kingfish for this competition, I wouldn't really worry about trying to be the perfect lure swimmer and have it swimming under the water so pristine and perfectly. I'd be throwing it into really good zones, and I'd be making as much splashing as possible. I'd be trying to imitate a bait fish that's fleeing, and your hookup rates are going to be generally a lot higher, or at least commitment on bites are going to be a lot higher, because when the fish see it, they know they have to react pretty fast, otherwise that fish is going to get away. But then on the other side of it too, it's like, if you've got fairly sleepy fish or fish that aren't too excited to bite, a lot of commotion on the surface, kingfish are pretty hardcore predators, so you can actually work them into biting. And I've had a lot of times where I've had a kingfish come in on the lure, and he's sort of checked it out all the way, not shown any inkling that he's going to bite, but I've just slammed it down on the surface, recreated another swim sequence, slammed it down, it made as much splashing as possible, and it's just got to the point where he's like, you know what, I actually think I want to eat this thing. So you can work them into a bite, and I've done that many times. So if you do see fish following, definitely do not slow down. Do not try and swim your lure super perfectly. If anything, speed up and make your lure skip out of the water and go crazy and basically act as a bait fish trying to get away because he's seen the kingfish following him. So that's probably the big one, I'd say. If you're going to be trying to get kingfish this year, just it's easy for kingfish to follow and not commit to a bite, but just think about what you're doing. You might be swimming it too perfectly and it's not triggering like a bite reflex or like a feeding reflex in the fish. Imitate the bait and you'll get a bite. So yeah, that's a massive one, is how you're swimming the lure and when. So I'd say there's going to be a few questions around that. So anyone got anything to say? Yep.
What's your favourite weather profile for fishing lures?
Weather profile? Like weather pattern? Oh yeah, so if it's too calm, it's often harder to get committed bites at times, even if you're doing all the right steps. So I like a bit of wind, I like a bit of chop, I like a bit of surge, just like a lot of ruffled surface. And even if the water's a bit murky, it's also good because it gives them less time to react and suss out what your lure is. So yeah, if it's super calm and super flat, it may look amazing and you may feel like, this is cool fishing, but when it's rough, it's generally a better time to get the bites I've found. Yeah. Anyone else? Any other questions? Ooh, just knocked off the thing, hang on. You boys had plenty of questions before. What's going on? I told these guys, these three, stop asking me questions and save them for the seminar. But yeah. So we'll talk about lure colours and stuff and lure profiles. Coming into this time of year, the mullet aren't really in big numbers yet. That the kingies aren't really feeding on the mullet. From my experiences, that's more later in the year, December, January, late November. But this time of year, there's a lot of mackerel around, a lot of kodu, jack max, things like that. It's still good to have a lure like this. I always have one with me. But generally, this time of year, I'll be bringing more greens or blues or combination green, blue, silvers into the mix. And strangely enough, I've done really well on just straight pink and silver lures this time of year. So don't ask me why, but in the past it seems to work pretty good. So yeah, coming into springtime, you're sort of matching the hatch, and the predominant bait fish around are mackerel at this time of year. So when you're going out, make sure you've got basically all your bases covered. I'd have like a darker contrasted lure, like something like this here, but then I'd also have something with a bit of blue, something with a bit of green, silvers, and those would probably be the ones I would reach for first. Whites are also good, whites with silvers. And I personally like the natural colours, so if it's a really crazy colour, like the pink is just a weird anomaly, I don't know what it is, but if it's a more natural look or a natural tone or colour, those are generally the lures that I'm throwing and that I'm carrying around with me. Size profiles as well, like I would class that as a medium size lure, 130 gram blackjack. Most of these sort of, most of the topwater rods will be able to throw this, especially the heavier ones. But you want to sort of match a lure up to your current setup. If you're running a lighter setup, you can't really throw a big lure because you're going to overload it. But yeah, the 230 mil sort of sizing is pretty good. 210s, but I'm running lures all the way up to 260, 270, some big lures like this, 180 gram sort of lures. So this time of year though, I'll more stick towards maybe maxing out at about that 130 size, 220, 230 mil size profile. And yeah, there's plenty of good lures out there. I just had a little walk around to see what they've got on the shelves there. And yeah, I've caught a bunch of kingies on the Nomad lures. They've got some Daiwa cuddlers there as well. And I've caught a bunch of kingies on those. So there's the white ones, the white and silvers, probably out of the colours there, probably the go-to, but there's also a couple other options that will get bites as well. So go and have a look at what they got there. I think the boys are doing some specials tonight, so it's a pretty good chance to actually go and buy something and get ready for the competition coming up. I sort of use a bunch of lures, but the main brands are the Daiwa ones, the cuddlers. I've caught a lot of good fish on those lures, which you can see on the shelf. OTLs are definitely lures I'm using a lot through the season. Molossi, and I'm using some black ledges as well. There's a few others that I'm using, but probably the big three would be the cuddlers and the OTLs in the 130 gram, in the 100 grams, and then the Molossis like what you can see on there. So those ones there are kind of like my favorite. They seem to work best for my styles of fishing, and I feel most confident in actually in throwing them. So last year, the biggest fish I caught out of the boat was on a Saltiga cuddler, which is out there, and it's a smaller lure. It's profile-wise, it's probably only 2/3 of the size of this, but they swim really well, and you can work them in many different styles as well. Swim styles too, like we touched on it before, but I think if I'm gonna try and break it down to like the perfect sequence, in my opinion, if you're in you're in your boat, you pull up to a bommy, there's a reef out in front of you breaking the surface. Maybe there's a few schools of bait fish around, or some birds circling, or birds in the water even. What I would do is I would come in on that bommy, on that reef, pretty quietly. I'd stay with a bit of distance until I knew I was close enough where I could cast my lure and nearly land on the rocks, and then I would basically cast the lure and get it as close to the rocks as I can. I would start swimming it pretty normally out from the rocks, but as soon as I saw a fish or an inkling of a big boil come up behind the lure or something, that's when I'd start speeding it up, and I wouldn't stop moving it fast until it was back to the boat, or most of the time, you'll be hooked up pretty quickly. So yeah, when you're cruising around looking for fish, you want to be looking for obviously bait. This time of year, bait is pretty predominant. Like you can turn up at a lot of the reefs and a lot of the bommies, and there'll be bait just established all around it. They'll be on the surface feeding on krill and things like that. You might have dolphins, you might have birds and whales. All sorts can happen, especially in the Hauraki up north where I'm from. Bait is key this time of year, the springtime. The fish are feeding up pretty hard, so when you do find the kingfish, they're normally in really, really good condition, and they're feeding up hard just before they start to spawn. So look for bait, look for current, look for areas where the currents and the tides are like really funneling in or pushing current. You can see current lines or see pressure points hitting ledges, and often you'll have kingfish in the area if they're not sitting right there in the current, and they're normally just on the top end of the current. Say there's a little rock here, the current's pushing down that way, the fish are normally on the front side of it, is what I've found, not in the back eddy. So come into a spot, figure out where the current is, and you want to get your lures into the upside of the current and work them through that way. But yeah, look for bait, look for current, look for depth, look for pinnacles or shallower reefs under the water, where deep water comes up and pushes up onto a shallower bank, and there might be like a reef down there. You can have fish sitting on top of the pin down there, even if there's no bait or anything on the surface. And you can actually raise a kingfish up from pretty deep as long as the water's relatively clear. You can pull them up from a fair way down, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, any other questions on the lures? Yeah? A bit of both, predominantly stick baits, because I feel like most of the committed bites have been more leaning towards stick baits. If I'm also running stick baits a lot more, but when I've done tests on either or, you can pull in a lot of fish with the poppers. They come into it a lot. But generally, if you're going to get a committed bite, the stick baits, it's normally the one that's going to get that bite. So in certain areas, I might use a popper, see what's around, and I have caught fish on poppers, don't get me wrong, but if I'm only going to throw one lure at one area, generally I'll be throwing a stick bait. Anything with a decent profile is good. I do like throwing the bigger lures, and probably the reason behind that is they're easier to make a bigger splash, a bigger profile. But then again, I've caught some pretty big fish on smaller lures. I think for me, like that size there is a pretty good all-rounder. You'll still catch smaller fish on that, but then you'll catch big fish as well. So I probably don't take as many smaller lures out. They're more leaning towards like that size or bigger. But anything around this sort of size here is basically pretty good. there's many ways to fight a kingfish, but what works best for me is I run a pretty heavy drag as much as I can handle. The gear can handle it, like the braid, the light, the leader, the reel, the rod, it's all rated to handle that easily. And my theory is, if I can hook a fish, I want to keep it as high in the water column as possible. So I basically try my best to stop it from going to the bottom, because the first thing they do is straight down. It's a little bit harder when you've just done a massive cast and it hits the lure right at the end of the cast, because you've got all that line lay and it can just arc straight down. But if you can, try your best to keep it up. Like, especially if I'm land-based, land-basing is like a whole new beast, but when you're land-basing, if a fish hits the lure, it's normally me to you away. It's normally really close because they're patrolling those edges. And when that happens, I'm either grabbing the spool, or with these reels, they've got a ton of drag, so you can lock it up basically. And as long as you're ready for it, and there's been many times where I've nearly been pulled in because there's a lot of pressure on it, but as long as you're ready for it, it's normally pretty good. So my sort of game plan is I try to keep it up as high as possible, and do not let it go down, because as soon as they start diving, that's when that's when shit hits the fan and you get into a bit of strife. So
You set the hook,
normally you don't need to, man. Normally you don't need to set the hook, because the fish are hitting it pretty hard. With the GT overseas, the general practice is set the hook, but with the kingfish, their mouths are slightly softer than the GTs, and they're hitting the lures that hard. And especially with like a good quality assist hook or single hook, it's the hook's buried and set before you basically realize what's happening. So I will set on occasion, but 99% of the time, by the time I know a fish is eating the lure, I'm already on. I'm already fighting it. Yeah. All right. So I think we'll come into the end of my list here. I just think when you're out there this spring trying to get them, just remember those key points. Look for bait. Look for those likely areas where those fish are patrolling. They'll probably be sitting around the bait. They'll be sitting on pins, sitting in current. And you want to get your lures in there without disturbing the area. Don't drive your boat right through the middle of it and suss it out and then go back and cast. Try and cast before you even get close. That's probably the big one. But then try and swim your lure as erratically as possible. That's something that a lot of people just want to swim it so perfectly, but it's actually probably hurting their chances of hooking up. So don't be afraid to splash. Lots of splashing, lots of jumping, lots of erratic movements is going to be your better chance to get a hook up. Yeah, the moon's an interesting one, man, because normally building up to the full moon is a good time, because you've got really big current flow, really, really strong currents. But in saying that, I've caught fish all through the full moon, new moon, no moon. The moon for me, I don't normally worry about it too much. But the one benefit is when you're going into a full moon, you get really strong currents, or a new moon, you get really strong currents. So current is everything when you're looking for kingfish. So if you can see the current, or you can go into areas and visually see those pressure points and those current edges, it's going to help you with finding fish, or finding likely spots, put it that way. But the moon is key, but it's not. I don't live and die by the moon like some other guys. If I'm going fishing, I'm fishing, sort of thing. If you're in the boat, probably I'd say give it 20 or 30 casts in each pin. But normally if they're there on an area, on a bommy, you'll get an encounter or a bite, or you'll get a bit of action basically straight away. So in the boat, you've got the opportunity to move around to different locations. When you're land-based, I just fish one spot all day long, because I know that spot's going to be good and the fish are going to patrol through. But in the boat, basically just fish a bommy, fish a patch of bait, have a bunch of casts on all different angles, maybe try different lures, different speeds, and then when you're sort of satisfied you've peppered it enough, then move on to the next one. With the boat, you can do that, So but definitely give it a bit of time. Don't just cast one cast in there, then move on. Sometimes it could be 20 casts in, and then you finally get a hookup, So it all depends if the fish are down deep, or if maybe they're just swimming into the bait or something like that. Yeah. Sweet. Oh well. Thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully I answered all your questions. Hopefully we get some big fish coming in.